All right. Welcome, JB, to the Self-Employment Success Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Of course.
It's a good time. Sorry I'm late. Hey, shout out to Leland. He's full of grace and mercy because I was late for this.
Life happens. You were putting out real fires.
Yeah.
Let's jump in. Tell us about yourself personally and professionally, what you do, your business, family, all that.
JB Anderson. I work for Young Life in Chesapeake. I've worked for Young Life for the last 10 years. Before that, I was a personal trainer in Fredericksburg. I had like my own little kind of personal training business at a gym where you're responsible for procuring clients and the success or, lack thereof. If you don't, you basically just get fired. So my business sort of acumen sort of started there where it was like, well, it's kind of sink or swim if you're going to do like a small, entrepreneur and be a personal trainer. Not super hard, but not super easy. I loved fitness, got into it. That was kind of part of my faith journey too. It was kind of like met the Lord, got fit. Like they went hand in hand. It was like get spiritually fit, take this thing serious, and then get physically fit at the same time. Don't be, in those spaces. And then I led Young Life during that time, went on to work for Young Life. I moved to Chesapeake 10 years ago to work for Young Life at Oscar Smith High School. And during that time, fell in love with coffee. Had some roommates that were involved with coffee. A couple of other things, like later on down the road brought me to coffee. Realized nobody was doing it in Chesapeake. Or really, there really wasn't anyone doing it locally. Like there were very few coffee roasters, like craft coffee roasters, small coffee roasters, in Hampton Roads for the most part. Like there were not a lot. And so I was like, okay, that's a niche that could be filled. I like this thing. We could hire some high schoolers. Just found out there's a group of like homeless kids, like 200 kids that were going to the high school that I was leading at were homeless.
Whoa.
So I was like, okay, well, what's, another way to help them? Like I fully believe that, sharing the gospel with them is the best thing you could possibly do. And while simultaneously saying, let's get you a job, let's figure out how to, affect all areas of your life. And then the coffee company sort of arose out of that. And that's kind of like where we're at today. My wife moved here. She did the same internship you did the year before, and then moved down a year after I did, lived with this family that went to the church that I went to. For 6 months, we got married, 2015. And then got 2 girls right now, twin girls. Have a little boy on the way. And I think that catches everybody up pretty quick.
Yeah, that's a good summary.
The last 10 years.
So you are in high school, and when did the personal training start? Like
right like a year, maybe like freshman year of college. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just don't like this model of learning. I don't like this model towards garnering success. So I am going to figure out something else, So I became a server at Red Lobster, easy cash business. And I liked those hours, and I liked the hustle and bustle of the food service industry. Food and bev was like super fun for me. It's what I did in high school. I worked at a couple of restaurants in high school. And so during that time, that first year when I got back from Harrisonburg, started working at Red Lobster. And then my sister got this, she got a job running a gym, running one of these. It's called American Family Fitness. So if you're local to Richmond or Frederick, it was a Richmond gym that expanded. And she began to run one. And she was like, hey, you should look into personal training. It's a great fit for you. Like all your skill set and what you want to do in life in this intermediary, sort of space, this liminal space, like you could call it. See what you think about it. And so that was, 18, 19. I did that for 3 years.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it was
So
great.
you had a pretty entrepreneurial muscle from the beginning, if that makes sense. Of many people nowadays just go to college and do all 4 years because you do elementary school, middle school, high school, college. You just sort of it's what you do. Many people don't aren't thinking through, I don't like the system. I want to go do something different. I feel but you do find that among entrepreneurs. There are plenty of really successful entrepreneurs who never went to college because they were I'm just going to go ahead and go do what I actually love and be the self-starter. So you kind of had that baked into you of I'm going to forge my path how I want to do it.
Yeah.
And then got into personal training, which is very entrepreneurial because it's eat what you kill. It's build your own client base, get out there. And then from there ended up taking this job with Young Life where they moved you down, or you moved down to Chesapeake, and have been there for 10 years. And you said in that window was when you were living with some guys and you found the love of coffee.
Yeah.
So you weren't drinking coffee before that.
No, I didn't drink coffee until I was 21. I think I tell people the first time that I drank coffee that I really remember drinking coffee was the first year that I did summer staff, or the second year that I did summer staff. I think I was at Rockbridge Young Life Camp, maybe at 19, 20, 21, something along those lines, that age time. And we got a week in and I was just super tired. And I was looking around and I noticed everybody else around me was not dragging like I was. This was hard 16, 18, 20-hour days, And I was like, what are you guys on?
What are you doing over here?
What's going on over here? And they were like, we were drinking coffee, just abusing caffeine and, the latter parts of the day to stay awake. And I was like, okay. I can do that. And then I tried some. I was like, this sucks. This is not taste good. This is a bad drink. Why are you drinking this? And they're like, well, the cat, just wait. And I was like, so at that point I was like, well, I need whatever this thing has in it. I want it. I hate the taste of this thing. So I just started taking 12-ounce cups of coffee, pouring it over ice so it would cool down immediately. And then I would chug it. And then that I would just do it at the middle of 3 or 4 o'clock.
Such a ridiculous strategy.
Middle of the day. And so I could drink it, because it tastes awful. And I didn't know about milk or sugar or sweetening it or trying to doctor it in any type of way at that point. And I was kind of on the health side too. So I was like, I'm not eating a lot of sugar anymore. I cut dairy out of my diet at this point of my life. And so there is this. So those things weren't even actually an option.
Yeah, you weren't going to do that regardless.
Yeah. So, and then that's where that first cup came from. And then when I moved to Chesapeake and I started living with these guys, one of them was a manager of Starbucks, a couple miles from our house. He would come home with, if you work for Starbucks, they used to give you a free pound bag of coffee a week.
Wow.
Yeah. You just got a bag of coffee.
Right.
And so when I moved in, there was 50 bags of coffee at the house or whatever. I went to the store, bought Folgers, came home with it, and the 2 guys that I were living with, just poked at me, made fun of me, and so I was like, okay, great. They threw it away. They're like, you can have this coffee. And I was like, all right. And they started introducing me to just different ways of making it, other than a drip coffee machine, Mr. Coffee at home, and so I think, I watched him make a Chemex once, and I was like, what's that? And they drank it, and he was like, it's delicious. And I was like, I mean, it tastes okay. Delicious might be the wrong. And then that just started growing, and I started being able to appreciate it more. And very much like wine. I don't know, as before I knew the Lord and started following Jesus and taking faith seriously, I loved to party, and we would drink boxes of wine just to get drunk, but that was
totally.
That does not taste good. Nobody drinks box of wine.
Yeah, you're not appreciating the notes and the tannins while you're slapping it back.
You know what I'm saying? So my chugging this thing to achieve a goal was, very easy for me at this point. So I understood this concept. And then the more coffee started to taste better, I guess I started to understand what people were trying to say. When it was like, this can taste good. This does have more to it than the caffeine part of it. And, shout out to those guys, Dave, and his name's David Matthews, the guy that I live
No
with.
way.
Yeah. Which is kind of funny.
Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and Matt, they were
Shout
great
out to
us.
Dave Matthews.
Yeah. They were great.
Great band.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like so you're living with Dave Matthews and you are enjoying coffee for the first time, kind of beginning to appreciate it. I feel like it's a big jump to go from like, I'm learning that I can appreciate this drink that I used to just chug for purely caffeine to, we should start roasting this. And I don't know if you're someone who's like, when I get into something, I really get into it. Like I get into fitness and then I'm like really into fitness. I get into coffee, I'm really into coffee. Like maybe that's your personality.
Yeah, a little bit.
But like there's a jump there from I'm enjoying this and appreciating it to this is now going to be a business.
There's part of me that has convinced myself that like if anything presents itself to me and is good, I'm like, I could probably sell this.
Okay.
I should probably sell this. Like the other day, like we were doing something, me and the wifey, and I was like, we should sell this. I have no idea. It's probably something stupid, like something very silly. And she laughs, and it's like my normal, like, we should sell this.
Yeah, like you're laughing, but I'm serious. Yeah, we're going to Shark Tank.
Right. So it is in me where, like I cut my neighbor's grass the other day because he's old and can't, and I was like, maybe I'll start. I could sell it.
You're like, landscaping is the next best step, of course.
I'll hit that neighbor up, I'll hit that neighbor up, I'll hit that neighbor up, and then, I'll just cut all 4 of our yards at one time.
That is that key, like what I was talking about of like, you've got the built-in entrepreneur muscle.
Yeah.
Like it just clicks for you of like, oh, well, I could sell this. I could make money off this.
100%. Yeah. I'm like, these definitely, that guy, and that guy don't want to cut their grass. I know for sure. Like, they'll probably take me up on this offer.
It's awesome.
And, but then I'm also the sucker that just cuts their grass. So.
Okay. So in that way, you've got the entrepreneurial itch and just horrible business skills.
Very bad. Yeah. Actually, that's like pretty true. Like, and not very good at business. Like.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
That's probably more accurate than you think.
And I feel like that's for many people, that's the case. They have the thing that they like love doing and they start a business with it. And then they're like, I actually don't like the business side of this. Or like, I'm not good at the like actual business piece.
Well, it's also a part of Young Life. Like people go to work for Young Life and they're like, I thought I was like hanging out. I thought I was doing the same thing I was doing in college, where it was like going and just being a local missionary, going to high schools, telling, introducing kids to Jesus. And it's like, no, when you work for like, there's a whole nother aspect of this thing.
You've got a budget, you've got fundraising,
But luckily I'm not, like, I like that side of it too. Like the entrepreneurial part carries me through that side too. But I have a couple of like, shortcomings in those areas too. Like, if something seems a little silly, it's hard for me to participate in it. Like I want to be a better team player in those ways. It's like, hey, we're going to start counting this thing. And I'm like, what? For real? Like what? Like that data set really matters to you, like kids with freckles on Tuesdays matters. Like I got to count kids with freckles now. And it's like, yes, you do. And I don't want to be the person that's like, I'm too good to do that.
Yeah.
But they just, it's give and take. And you got to figure it out.
I have never thought about how entrepreneurial Young Life leadership or Young Life staff is. Like I was a volunteer leader, but I've never really thought about the fact that like you're really running an area, like you're running a local franchise of a nonprofit in so many ways. So
totally.
All of that falls on you. And of course you've got to like read the data and collect it and make reports. And I mean, it's just, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
So you decide you want to start roasting this coffee.
It happened because of a trip to Annapolis where my wife lives, my wife's parents live, and where that internship that you guys did is, and there's a coffee roaster, Ceremony Coffee.
It's incredible.
It's right behind her parents' house, like walking distance, like 100 feet, whatever. Walk in to get this cup of coffee. I see the roasting equipment. I go, what is this? It's the process to get, green coffee to roasted coffee. And then they had the coffee shop side too. So they get to, from start to finish, cup of coffee in my hand. And the guy was roasting back there. He's this Irish dude. And I just asked him randomly, I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Is it hard? And he was like, no, it's not. Grabs a book, gives it to me on roasting coffee. And he was like, it's not hard. You can teach yourself. It's a little expensive to get into. I'm not going to tell you you're going to succeed, but it's not very hard. I can do it. And I'm a dummy. I was like, okay. He's like, I'm actually moving to Ireland, in 6 months to start my own roastery. I was like, maybe I should do that in Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
As I told him I was from Virginia Beach because nobody knows where Chesapeake is. And he was like, yeah, you should. So shout out to that random Irish dude.
Yeah, thank you,
Irish going back to Ireland to start this. I don't know. If you're listening, I appreciate
Yeah, I really hope he's doing well these days.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you just bought a roaster and just started doing it.
I bought the crappiest coffee roaster off of probably Etsy. Like this dude was fabricating old rotisserie chicken ovens. So like imagine like a 3x2 rotisserie chicken oven at like a grocery store or something. Like maybe like 2 or 3 chickens would sit on a spindle. So what happens is you need beans need to rotate. They need to move, right? They need a certain amount of heat to get to this place called First Crack, which is you have to hit First Crack in order to drink, for the coffee to be any good at all, right? And then after it rotates, it hits a certain heat, it cracks, right? You have to have some ventilation off of your equipment because it produces a ton of smoke while it's cooking, and gas, and then at that time you decide when you're going to stop cooking the coffee.
Okay.
All right.
So from there, that's when kind of
that's where,
do we want it bolder, darker, lighter, like that kind of stuff? Okay.
Correct. And so I taught myself, me and this kid, Jay, shout out to Jay, and taught ourselves on this crappy rotisserie chicken
but what I'm not
roasting machine. And so the way that would happen, it was this steel drum. We had these like super hot oven mitts. We would pull the drum out. You would open it. We would dump it into this like makeshift cooling system. We'd cool the beans down, and then you store it in like a food grade bucket. And that was the origin of it.
What I'm trying to picture is the rotisserie. I get ventilation, rotisserie chickens have to keep moving, but don't they spin like up and down kind of versus like coffee needs to go like...
No. So what you're thinking, that coffee that you're seeing go this way, that's after it's gone. It's tumbled in a drum.
Interesting.
So like imagine, so like a barrel standing on its side. That's the inside of a coffee roaster.
Okay.
Right? The beans insert from a chute at the top. They get poured into this drum. The drum then spins.
Okay.
For 20 minutes at 400 degrees, let's say.
That's pretty hot.
And after that 20 minutes, you release them, and then they enter that thing that you're seeing with the brown coffee.
Yeah.
That's the cooling tray.
Okay. Got it. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about this at all. I drink coffee every day. I've never thought about it. So when you first started doing this, the picture in my head is you're like, I like coffee. This guy in Annapolis said it wasn't that hard. I can self-teach myself and I can sell anything. And
that's a good note too. I listen to people when they're like, hey, you could do this. Like, okay. Like I did personal trainings. My sister said, hey, You could do this. I'm like, okay.
Sure.
And then somebody was like, hey, you would be good on Young Life staff. You should apply. I'm like, all right.
All right, great.
And so that's how God has really worked in my life that way. Where, it's really worked out when somebody has noticed something like that.
So
just side note.
Well, which is a sweet side note and a really good awareness piece of that. Like, look at all these people in my life who've just spoken into my life and said, hey, you can do this.
Yeah.
And how that's worked. And honestly, like how many people like don't have someone in their life, like speaking life into them in those ways,
totally.
Like where people could go if we are just willing to be like, hey, I believe in you. I could do this. Like scripture says love believes all things. And that passage has love does a lot of other things. But like, I've always been like, what does it mean to like believe all things about someone? Like if I really want to love someone or care for someone, like I need to believe all things. Like, do I believe you can grow or change or that you'd be good at this? Or like believe that you could go do great things or you could like, get past addiction or whatever it is,
all things are possible. Scares a lot of people. Sometimes it scares them into complacency. Sometimes it scares them into just a shell of themselves is what I've noticed most. It's like you just enter some state of like timid, play it safe. Almost like turtle, like you retreat back into your shell. But when somebody comes along and says, oh, you got what it takes. You're like, yeah, I do.
Oh my gosh.
I got this. I'm going for it. That's why people love coaches. Like they loved their coaches. Like most people, it's like, hey, who is the most important person in your life, Leland?
Me?
Yeah.
My wife.
All right. Second. Who's your most important person in high school?
My best friend, Will.
Why?
Honestly, because of that.
It's like, it always comes back to like, dude, they had my back and encouraged me all the time. And I believed them.
Yeah. Will is the primary driver of why I'm following the Lord. And he just was like,
shout out to Will.
Shout out to Will. Will's a great guy. I mean, he just always kind of like believed the best in me, encouraged me, was like, let's go do this. We can do this.
Yeah.
I was like, I would have never thought that I could or would do something. Like so many examples of things, And it is true. I feel like people, when they don't, this idea of like it scares people into like the turtle mode. Oftentimes, like when you begin to believe these things of like, I can't do this, it requires you to like take action or take a risk or get uncomfortable. And it's much more comfortable to stay inside the shell. And we begin to create narratives and stories of like, oh, why that's a bad idea, why I could never do that, why like our brains are like hardwired for survival. So it's like, no, you can't go do that. No, you can't. Or this is just the way it is. This isn't for people like me. And so having like an outside voice almost interrupt that and say, oh, you'd be great at this. You have all the skills. Like you could totally do this really well and be successful. Like interrupts those narratives that we tell ourselves that most of the time are on autopilot. We're not even like processing what we're actually like the stories we're telling ourselves or the way we're living. And that's why I think it's really cool to be able to speak into someone's life and be like, no, this is great. Or like, you're really gifted in this, or, what if it looked different? Or like, what if, anyways, I could rabbit hole down that all day long. It's awesome.
Me too. I mean, it's like one of my favorite things to talk about.
That's awesome. Okay, so get us up to speed now. So we got the coffee roasting going. You, I'm assuming, started selling coffee, but nowadays I know there's a coffee shop. There's like you've kind of branched into the other pieces of basically like wholesale
or retail.
So,
retail coffee shops is like the retail side, and then wholesale is your roaster that's selling to coffee shops or other people who are serving the coffee, who are brewing it, right? Anything wholesale is you're not selling brewed coffee, and then anything retail is you're selling brewed coffee. Shout out to my wife. She just texted me. It popped up on the computer. Love you.
I appreciate your shout outs.
Yes.
We're shouting out everyone on this.
Put me in front of a mic, dude. I'll talk, and I love it. One of my favorite things to do. But let's work back. Let's work back from right now to maybe where that question is originating from. I work better that way.
Great.
So currently, like today, we have Donut Friday on Fridays at Taxus Street. 845 South Battlefield Boulevard, Chesapeake. We're inside Big Ugly. We had there's a local family who started a donut company in Chesapeake, Classic Donuts. This is not an exaggeration. I'll stake myself, my reputation. I'll even stake money on it. It's the best donut you'll ever eat.
Wow.
And they popped up at a farmer's market in Chesapeake in maybe like 2019, 2020, something like that. And so Julianne had one, said, you got to try this. We tried it. And then they were moving from like popping up to a food truck. So it was a little easier to get in and out of places or whatever. And we said, hey, would you, either we said it or they said it. But something happened to where they were like, we would like to set up at the coffee shop on Fridays. And it's turned into like a thing. Like a Chesapeake staple. Yeah. Like
awesome.
I mean, like hundreds and hundreds of people
wow.
They're either taking off work or they don't have jobs anymore. I don't know which one it is, but like I'll pull up to the coffee shop at like 8:30. I wake up, spend time with the wifey, the kids, whatever, get to the coffee shop at 8:30. We've been open for like an hour or two, whatever. Well, Classic will open up at 5 or 6 and there's a 2-hour line. People stand in line for these donuts for hours. So
that is outrageous.
Yeah. Every week. It's not like
it wasn't like a one-off.
Yeah, there's not a one-off thing. It's been going on for about 4 or 5 years now. So if you're looking for the best donut of your life, come get us on Fridays.
I mean, yeah, you sold me. I'm like, I need to look at my calendar next Friday.
Yeah, you need to come get one. And then during that time, people would just come inside and get some coffee too. And so it was a really good jump start. And so now Fridays have become this staple thing in the community. And then I get to see, so like it's become a great networking opportunity. I mean, I saw about 20 people that I wanted to see today because of ministry, just Young Life relationship wise, right? And then there's another crew from the gym that I go to. There's another crew from the church that showed up. It's awesome. So it's great. And so the retail side of the company is going well. We're building a little spot inside Big Ugly right now to where we don't have to pop up and take down every day. So the easiest way to run the coffee shop out of the brewery is to essentially have everything on wheels and bring it out, do our service, and then bring it to the back and stage it. And that's annoying. It gets really frustrating at the end of the day. And it was really exciting in the beginning. And then it becomes a place where it's like, it's why people move from a food truck to a brick and mortar, even if their food truck's killing it. It sucks. It just sucks.
Yeah.
It feels less legitimate sometimes. And so we're building a little outfit in one of the sort of unutilized spaces in Big Ugly right now. We're trying to figure out that workflow and just how the service will work from there. But we're excited about that. We've been working on that for about a year, getting that going. And then the last 3 years, like you had the COVID stretch, right? So you had 2020, everything shuts down. And then you had about a 3-year stretch of like, is your business going to make it or not make it? And, working backwards, like we didn't carry a ton of debt. So we had a really good, we had an advantage heading into COVID, and then took on some debt during COVID, not like a ton, but there were so many circumstances that went on in that 3-year stretch that led us to where we are now. But working backwards, Julianne took over managing the coffee shop, and that single-handedly, that is the best thing that has happened to the company.
That's awesome.
For sure. Like without any doubt in my mind, that's the best thing that has happened to the company. The second best thing that happened to the company is us deciding to sell a minority stake in the company to this couple that we knew. from the gym. And the value that they've brought in has been very, very beneficial to sort of our waning desire to keep grinding at this thing that has been really hard, especially coming out of the grind of keeping your small business alive during COVID.
Totally.
So those two things hand in hand basically happened at the same time. About it, maybe Julianne takes over the coffee shop maybe like a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. I should know that, but something along those lines. And then let's say a year ago, probably exactly like a year ago, we sold this minority stake to this couple, and it's just been it's been fruitful, right?
Yeah.
And I think the fruit's good, so like
totally.
That's been it's been awesome.
I knew about Julianne. I didn't know about this couple. So what is their role currently? Like, obviously they're providing value, like you said, but
she works for Mob Pizza and does like HR stuff for Mob Pizza. So she's very systems based, understands people, understands how to like kind of like hear a problem and diagnose this whatever is going on, like able to point you in the right direction. She does a good job at pointing too and not telling, which is really special. Well done, Emily. Shout out to Emily. And then this dude, Tyler. He is he likes numbers. So he wants to do accounting. He wants to do price projection. He wants to do performance. He wants to make spreadsheets. He wants to he wants to know the pennies. He wants to know, he really
he loves the business side.
Yeah, he loves the business side, right? And it's like I like the business side too. Don't get me wrong, but the amount of attention, like it's almost like I'm ADHD or ADD towards it. Like I start looking at it, and I'm like, that's good, and I just go back to like, oh, let's go talk to some people. But like he's been on his P's and Q's for that, and has really like honed in on like just a couple of things that we needed to get better right in the beginning. It was just good seeing it, right? It's just like like actually counting like really mattered at this point. And so he's good at that. And then so he said, hey, I want to do accounting and I want to sell some coffee. And I was like, great, because I don't want to do accounting anymore and I don't want to sell any more coffee anymore. I'm really I'm tapped out. Like, like the no's got to me, and the frustration of, sales is, just was a tidal wave that came over me, and right at the right time, it was like, oh, I want to sell some coffee. And I was like, great.
Game on.
Perfect. It really was. Yeah. It really was perfect. And the guy that we used to be in business with, he went to be a missionary in like 2022, like January 2022 or something like that. And so we bought his 50% of the company. And then my late mother-in-law, Julianne's sweet mother's cancer came back, and so Julianne went to Annapolis to care for her mother for 4 months during this process, and we're hoping the surgery was going to be successful, and then it ended up not being successful, and Laura passed away. And then when we came back, it was like, does Julianne go back to work? And it, and then that time we have some, just like people holding down the fort, but like nothing's, nothing's
and you had just had identical
and
twins.
We just had twins, and like so and so when we get back, it was regroup. And what's the regroup look like? The regroup look like, why don't you go work for the coffee company, Julianne? And so she started, and she rocks.
That's
she
awesome.
slaps. She's a systems person too. She's detail oriented. She's clean. I'm not very clean, like in general, like you would think of like a little boy, like messy little boy type of thing, like I'm still that way. Like I'm just messy. And so she came in and cleaned things up really quick, but I am working with my wife though. So it's, relationally that's tough.
Yeah. What has that been like?
But, well, it's just like, you're not, like I gotta think more. Like I just, it's just a little extra care that goes in, like I'm not gonna just be here at the coffee shop with you, and I don't really get to, if I do say something that offends you, like it's not like a text message like, hey, sorry, see you tomorrow, type of thing. it has more ramifications, and the stakes are higher there. And so, and she wants to do well, and I want to do well, and she wants to look competent, and I want to look competent. And so you're doing a dance, and the dance is great, and we work really well together. And in the beginning, you got to figure out, you got to figure out how you want to be spoken to, and then let the other person know. Like my food and bev background, I'm like, Julianne, you're legitimately allowed to yell at me. Like, tell me where to go, tell me what to do, type of thing. And eventually she was like, hey, I don't want you yelling at me and telling me where to go and what to do. I want you to present it in, and not necessarily like explicitly saying like present it in a different way or whatever, but it was communicated like, hey, that wasn't kind, and I'm like, dang, I need to be,
and
I
like,
wanna be
yeah,
kind.
I'm sure it's like, I'm not your employee, I'm your wife.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to like talk to me like that.
Right. So navigating that, but I'm sure, I'm sure lots of people navigated that, and it's not like, it was just a new arena to navigate normal husband-wife communication.
Yeah.
And so, but
totally. It's like it's just another overlap in your life.
Totally.
And which is great, like, but can produce more rubs, which can produce more intimacy. Like, but also it produces intimacy when you have to move through the rubs and like figure out how to do that. I feel like working with a spouse is like a high risk, high reward, or like more work, more reward kind of piece to that.
It is definitely, it's got to be high risk, high reward for sure. I think I agree with that. And we benefited. It's been great. So she's holding it down. It's great. The coffee shop side, the retail side of the business is smashing. That's awesome.
I want to jump back to earlier in the conversation. You mentioned there was something like 200 homeless high school kids.
Yeah.
How are there that many homeless? I mean, for listeners, my wife and I are foster parents right now. So we're our eyes are being open to like whole other ways that people experience life in the world. But that's a large number of homeless kids.
Yeah.
Like how?
Yeah, the category.
How did you find them? Where did you find them?
So, like a group of pastors, the principal found out, called this guy. That guy was mentoring me at the time. Brings me into the conversation with a group of pastors. And then over the course of like months of trying to figure out how to affect this situation, the solution was, well, we need to find them a home. And that sounds obvious, but it was like, we need to find them foster parents and find them a place to have people who believe in them and encourage them and can get them where they need to go and just meet, their minor needs and, just start living that way instead of, because a ton of the kids weren't homeless in the sense of like sleeping in tents, in tent cities where like the adult homeless live. They're sleeping on friends' parents' couches and living in, aunts, whatever.
Yeah, they like don't have any sort of stable housing,
like,
but they're not.
Yeah, they're not living with family, like direct family, and they don't have a room. Essentially, was kind of like the two parameters that they found, and so they started undertaking that, finding them, like some of the kids that were 18, they found them apartments and found funding for them in those ways. And then one of the sides was like this jobs idea. And so in the beginning, it was like, all right, this is going to be great. But then I had to have the business to be able to hire them. And we were building a new business. So it wasn't this immediate solution, but like the heart was there to get it going. And so, over the years, been able to, here and there, like pay kids to bag coffee or help roast or whatever it is, but minimally, like nothing like I wanted to until like the last couple of years, where maybe like 3 years ago, we hired some baristas. We got some high schoolers that have come in, been baristas, this girl from Oscar Smith, and then a couple from Great Bridge, and a couple from Grassfield. And so we've been starting to hire, high school baristas, and then go from there.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I didn't know you were fostering. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been about 6 months. It's been great.
Dang.
And hard, and I mean, all the things. We have a newborn with us that we got from basically birth, and so which has been really like such a joy and an honor and sweet. And it's like the newborn phase, so you're not sleeping, and you're kind of forced into seeing like a lot of brokenness and depravity in people's lives, and we're trying to like care for our foster child. We're also trying to care for his family when we can, and but so yeah, it's been we are brand new to this. It's like our first time ever doing it, and so it's been a real learning curve. But even when we're going through foster care training, we're learning in Virginia Beach, they're like, yeah, there's about 300 kids in foster care, but only 50 families who are foster families. And just kind of like how rampant it is, or just, when you go through your life, you don't see this side of society most of the time. Like, you're not seeing these issues.
Right.
But it's really cool that you're able to like be in those conversations and provide a place for some of them. Like, so much of that is just giving these kids like a leg up and like the resources they need, and being someone, like we said earlier, who can be a voice that says, you'd be really good at this. Yeah. Or like, you can totally do this. Because so many of them generationally have just been given this story of like, we'll never go to college. People in my family don't go to college, or we don't make money, or whatever.
Yeah, we'll never figure out our path to.
Yeah, or like, this is just the way it is. Mm-hmm. And to be able to like offer a high school kid this job.
You ever read sorry for interrupting.
No, you're fine.
You ever read the book, The Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, that book describes this like really well.
Totally.
Like, which is, it's just wild.
I know.
It really is. You just emulate what you grew up. You really do emulate what you grew up seeing.
Oh, yeah. Even if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like people tend to live out of like a full cup or an empty cup. There are definitely the like, I do not want to do it the way my family did it.
Yeah.
But then you're still going to emulate pieces of it. Like, you can't fully break that, all the time. And I mean, there's still times where I'm like, whoa, that was exactly what my parents do or like did, and so it is amazing. Like, and it perpetuates itself.
Yeah.
And so you look, and that's what's been really cool about our experience in foster care is with our child and seeing others where like we are beginning, like, it is so generational. Like, we can look up our foster child's like line and see, a lot of the same cycles, but to be like, this could be the situation that breaks the cycle for him and for his parents, and like people, like, to wake people up. And it's not always that beautiful of an ending, and we still don't know what it'll be like, but I do think we just perpetuate things until there's an interruption, until there's like a forcing mechanism that says this could be different. And things like foster care, or like what you're doing with these baristas or Young Life, or any of these things where you can step into someone's life and be a voice that says like, hey, you're loved and you're okay. And like, life is good and it can be different and you can have a lot of purpose. Yeah. Like, there's so much purpose in life, and be able to almost like call people higher. And totally. I feel like people will rise to an occasion if it's set for them.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If life is suffering, like some of the old philosophers love to say, then when someone enters into your suffering and says, I'll join you, we might make it out of this. Mm-hmm. Your suffering almost immediately turns from sheer suffering to purpose.
Yeah.
Totally. This thing is about to end said suffering. Mm-hmm. Maybe not for good, but at least this current scenario, mm-hmm. it's getting contended with. It's like, I have nobody that loves me. except for this dude Leland, who's voluntarily raising me.
Yeah.
As my own, like as if you had a high school or something like that. You were you were fostering a 15-year-old or something like that. It's like nobody loves me. It's like this group of these two people at least do.
Totally.
Like that's not nothing.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, it can bring tears to my eyes, some of like the stories, because when you go through foster care training, they're like, here's a lot of the cycle. The kid will come in, they'll be on their best behavior, and you'll be like, this is easy. And this is especially for like the high school and like older kids. And then they'll start to feel comfortable and loved, and they'll immediately try and break you because they're almost like, surely, like no one's ever cared for me this way, or like, surely this is just an act.
Let's see how long it takes.
Yeah, like the classic, like everybody in my life leaves me story. Like, what is it going to be for you? And so they were like, you're going to have this honeymoon period, and then it's going to be miserable, and they're going to do everything they can to break you. And if you just keep showing up and you just keep caring for them and you just keep like being healthy and like, then eventually you'll move through that, and that's when you'll like see the change. And that's when like a lot of their honesty will come out. That's when they'll begin to trust you. That's when like, and there's just so many stories of it. And it's like, it's really powerful. And you can see like, of course that makes sense, and so I do think there's something to what you were saying of like, this random person or this random couple or my boss, at the coffee shop, like really loves me, and how that alone can just impart an unbelievable amount of change. Like, I think that's why it's like love believes all things. Like, can you the results can be unbelievable. Can you believe that it can be beyond your wildest dreams?
Right.
Like,
can tomorrow be a little better than today?
Yeah.
Could an hour from now be a little less painful than this last hour, whatever it is?
Totally.
So, it can. And believing that's not nothing.
Yeah. And it takes like a level of curiosity, like, can it be better? And I mean, when we had our son Levi, he's incredible, and he has a lot of medical complexities, and we've been kind of on the special needs journey with him. And originally it was like we were going through that grief process of like, whoa, how is this our story? How is this his story? All these things. But it took someone kind of challenging me to like not be a victim, but get curious of like, how could this be awesome?
Yeah.
Or like,
wow, what
does this mean?
Yeah.
For your, like, are the best days of your life behind you? Probably not. So what is the future going to look like? Whoa. And like, how can you,
exactly, like
step into this and like realize like, and continue to grow. I feel like some of these mindset stuff we're talking about, like getting curious, beginning to believe things, beginning to just imparts growth, like forces you to think outside of where you're narrowly focused in on.
Yeah.
It's like, what is actually true? Is what I'm believing true? Probably not fully.
Right.
Okay, so for sake of time, gotta wrap up. I feel like you and I could go down this for a while.
Yeah. Do it again.
This is a podcast about success, but obviously that word means a million different things to a million different people. So for you, how do you define success for yourself, for your life?
So, the forgiveness thing, I told you about that before. I think when you're around somebody that's able to say, please forgive me, by the grace of God, I'll be better next time. That changes the atmosphere. It changes the space you're in very easily. And in business, I think you're going to have to do that a ton. So it's a little bit of like, are you able to hold on to being willing and humble enough to admit you were wrong when you were wrong? That's a good marker of success for me personally. Definitely not connected to any type of monetary related goal. And then at the same time, success is looking like building something too, like not, and it doesn't need to be almost like St. Peter's Basilica. It's like, that's like, 400-year project, like maybe it's something like seeing a project through to completion, success, something like that. Enduring, like we got those verses like that, endurance, patience produces endurance, and endurance produces perseverance, and whatever it is. I'm butchering it right now, but like that perseverance and endurance and striving to achieve the goal ahead, and and not giving up. So something around those lines. And I know that's like a little, airy and ambiguous, but
no, I love it.
It really is sort of like a twofold thing like that for me. I think that's good success.
Oh yeah. And so much of that definition of success is tied to like your heart and your growth and like who you are as a person, and who you're becoming as a man and as a person, more so than like worldly achievement. And I think we tie success to achievement too often, more than like, because even you're saying like carrying a task to completion, but like what you're saying there is like that endurance, like the growth that comes out of that, the like, patience, perseverance, like all of that like is fostered in you as success. Cool.
That's it.
I love it.
That's it.
Well, JB, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for being on the Self-Employment Success Podcast.
Yeah, man. I'll come back anytime.
Awesome.